Very good afternoon and a very warm welcome to all the members who have joined live on this VCM on the CSR under Schedule 7 of the Companies Act, vis-a-vis the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And today we have with us the chairman of the Corporate Social Responsibility Committee of ICAI, CA Satish Gupta ji. Our guest speaker for today, CA Rajesh Mittal, the vice chairman of the committee in absentia, who will be joining very shortly, CA Aniket Talati, and my colleagues in the CSR committee. Let me begin by saying that how important the role of CSR is, though it may seem to be hovering around only one particular section in the Companies Act, but the Council of the Institute decided that this should be separately considered by a specialized committee, and here we are. And in fact, in tandem with our mandate of providing enrichment, providing the contemporary knowledge and the emerging knowledge to the members, we are doing these VCMs, and today again we are here. And it's a very lively topic because though it may seem that there is only one section, 135, and it explains what should be done and what should not be done. But let me take you back to the linkage of the concept of CSR in India, concurrent to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. I think this movement, which started in 2015, and 190 plus signatories to UN SDG, and India is also one of them. So during the period 2016 to 30, we are trying to achieve, the world is trying to achieve 17 goals in which the entire goals have been segregated into 169 targets and 230 indicators. And the idea is in tandem with what we have been talking in India as regards the inclusive development, and we talk of disaggregation here, that no one is left behind in the ultimate outcome of 5 Ps, where we are talking about people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnerships. So with that broad agenda, the world started on a common goal of achieving what is called as the socially sustainable development goals. And in fact, the first 6 goals are talking about the social agenda of poverty, hunger, good health, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation. And it goes on to another 6 indicators in the economic aspect, 3 in the environment aspect, and ultimately, we are talking about the impact outcome and the stronger institutions. Now, if we correlate it to how it started in India, this concept globally started, well, it evolved. Earlier, it was in avatar of Millennium Development Goals. And moving forward, we came to the Sustainable Development Goals. But if we talk to the Indian position, we are also contemporary because 2009, we for the very first time, we had the voluntary guidelines on CSR, which were again replaced by national voluntary guidelines on environment and economic responsibility. And 2012, the SEBI came out with concept of business responsibility reporting. 2013, we had Section 135, specially carved out for CSR. And 2021, we see another notification by SEBI, wherein for top listed 1,000 companies, the BSR is going to be mandatory from next financial year, though it is voluntary this year. Now, what is CSR? I think we have moved beyond a philanthropy or addressing some of the minor issues such as occupational hazards or worker well-being, and socially responsible, a societal citizen in the corporate form. Let's link it to how the Indian economy started. We started as a concentrated economy and the various industry policy resolutions, we talked about the public sector as the harbinger of growth. But with the liberalization, privatization, and globalization, the role of private sector has evolved, and there has been an emerging feeling that while the corporate sector derives its sustenance, profitability, it should be equally conscious about what it should be doing for the society. And the entire mandate of Section 135 hovers around that. And in fact, I will not delve into to whom all it is applicable. Of course, it's applicable even to foreign companies who have a subsidiary and branch office, and applies to all sort of companies in India. The act is very clear. We have how CSR committee is to be constituted, what kind of CSR policy should be continuing. I think what has become important is more than triggers and economic numbers, the focus now on the impact outcome. Now, if we correlate it to the UN SDGs, I think the broad intent of the UN SDG and the corporate social responsibility, they are congruent and they ultimately come to the same goal. So I think we have a very learned speaker today, and we are all looking forward to listen to him. Rajesh Mittalji is a fellow member of the institute, and he is also an insolvency professional and registered valuer under the securities and financial asset class. He is running an advisory firm in investment banking and corporate financial advisory. So with this brief introduction of Rajesh ji, may I now request the chairman of the committee to carry forward this session. And it is his initiative. This year we decided that we'll be running this knowledge enhancement series. So over to you, Satish ji, for explaining what the committee is doing and how the CSR as a practice area and as a compliance area, what it means for the profession, be it in the practice or whether they are in the employment, and how we can be more meaningful as partner in national development to the society at large. Over to you, Satish ji.
Thank you very much, sir. Rakesh Sehgal, sir. He is director of our Directorate for Corporate Laws and Allied Laws in the ICAI. Honorable Speaker of the Day, very knowledgeable, very renowned Rajesh Mittal ji. We all have seen his introduction. Sonali Das Haldar ji is very qualified and very intelligent Secretary of the Committee for CSR. Sakun ji, Nikita ji, and my dear friends who in very big number are attending this, I think, very important knowledge enhancement series started by the CSR Committee of ICAI this year. A very good and happy afternoon and namaskar. Friends, I am really happy to see that we have started with the initiations of Sehgal sir, with the motivation of Sehgal sir, a very important knowledge enhancement series in CSR. And I think you all have witnessed wonderful sessions. And this is also a very, very important and very knowledgeable session. Today, our Honorable Speaker Rajesh Mittal ji will deliver lecture that how Schedule 7 of the Companies Act regarding CSR is inspired by the Sustainable Development Goals announced by the United Nations in 2015 for the very pious object that we want that world should live in better conditions by 2030. यानी 2015 में यूनाइटेड नेशंस ने सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट गोल 17 दिए हमारे पूरे वर्ल्ड के लिए कि 2030 में वर्ल्ड बेहतर रहने के लायक कैसे बन सके. तो इसी with this object these goals were given as rightly narrated by Sehgal sir, and we all know that poverty, hunger, quality education to all, health for all, gender equality, clean water, life underwater, life on earth, climate change, other, there are several things, but all total 17 are the sustainable development goals given by the UN. So whether Schedule 7 of the Companies Act, representing the areas where CSR funds will be spent, whether that particular Schedule 7 is inspired by these SDG or not, and what are the differences and what are the intentions behind it, will be taken care of by the Rajesh Mittalji in his deliberations. Friends, I would not touch upon the topic of the day. I would simply talk about the activities of the CSR committee this year. Friends, you know that we all witnessed the second phase of the COVID-19 pandemic, and we all know that that was horrible. And believe me, friends, I am thankful to all the branches, all the chartered accountants, all the chartered accountant students for making all the efforts to help members, their families, and the society at large in this pandemic time. We formed COVID special task force at every branch level, and those COVID special task force left no stone unturned in serving the community, in serving the society at need. So I am really thankful to you all, friends, to your all the branches, all the students who took active part in as a COVID special task force and helped the society at large. We are aware, friends, and we are working on preparing I think a coffee book type thing, a scrapbook type thing, where we will bring that what our branches did in this pandemic COVID-19 time, how did we help to the society at large. And this coffee book is going to be a memorable document for the years to come. And we are going to present this particular document to the government so they can realize that as a chartered accountant institute, we are not only working for accounts, for audit, for taxation, or for the finance sector. We are also working for the society at large, for the we are understanding our social responsibility, and our chartered accountants are working hard in this area. Second thing, friends, we have taken place this year on 1st of July, that is our CA day, a very important day for all of us, that we will plant 10 lakh trees. And this particular work of 10 lakh trees plantation will be taken care of by the individual chartered accountant, an individual student as a ISR. ISR means individual social responsibility. And I am happy to say, friends, that all are working a lot, and CSR committee is taking care to inspire all the members and all the students on their birthdays and other good days that you should plant at least a tree on any happy occasion. You should take care of that tree at least for 3 years. And not only planting, but you should also report that planting with a photo to our mail and csr.isr@icai.in. I will repeat, friends, csr.isr@icai.in. So, friends, we will send you a very, we will be thankful to you by sending an appreciation certificate. And that particular appreciation certificates will be a part of your recognition, our recognition to your effort. So thank you very much, friends, that you are taking a very good initiative. You are taking active part in this our tree plantation drive. We are holding certificate course, and we have started 3 batches this year. And we definitely are thankful that we are going to start more batches in the times to come this year. And you will, I will request you that if you have not attended this course, you please take part, because I can assure you that CSR is a big opportunity for our profession. So, friends, I would take another 1 or 2 minutes just to giving you a brief outline about the opportunities in the profession in CSR. Friends, as rightly narrated by Sehgal Saab, BRSR, Business Responsibility and Social Reporting. This is a very important milestone of the profession, for the profession, because the SEBI has mandated that from the next year onwards, 1,000 top companies of the country will have to report in a BRSR. And friends, this form is of the 34 pages. And believe me, friends, that without taking help of chartered accountant, it is very tough to fill this form. So kindly go through the BRSR and just try to incorporate this particular form in your practice area. Another thing, CSR1 registration. If any company is going to choose any implementation agency for the spending of CSR or for the project determination, therefore they will have to, the implementing agency has to register themselves by filing the CSR1 form, and that form needs the certification by a chartered accountant or a company secretary or a cost accountant. So this is also an opportunity for our profession. Thereafter, friend, there are certain things where reporting is required. There are certain fields where we can advise as an implementation consultation or implementation advisor. We can advise as an impact assessment consultant or impact assessment advisor. And CSR audit, although it is not compulsory as of now, but friends, believe me, that all the corporate, because there is a liability on the CFO to report several things about the CSR to the board. So I think CSR audit is going to start very soon. We can go for it, and our committee in the immediately preceding year has issued some guidelines about and forms also about the CSR audit. So you can adopt all these things. Thereafter, CSR certification is also a big opportunity for all of us. And you believe me that latest Caro report, which is going to be start this year, I think. So you will find there also a reporting on the CSR. So friend, there is a big opportunity for our profession in this field of CSR. Very few section, only one section 135, some rules and schedule 7 and some BRSR and some other SDGs and ESG, etc. But I think with all the knowledge, we can have a big opportunity for our profession. And I believe that you will take all these things in the positive manner. I again request you to have a pledge by today itself. If you have not still planted one tree, so take a pledge, friends, that you will plant at least one tree this year. You will take care of that tree which has been planted by you at least for next 3 years, and you will report this plantation of your tree which you will take care for the future. You will report it to the csr.isr@ICAI.in. So I don't want to take much of your time, because I know that Mittal sir is a wonderful speaker, is a very good communicator, and a very knowledgeable person, and he is going to bring some new value additions today in your I can say professional knowledge, in your knowledge about CSR. So I am thankful to you for listening me patiently. I am thankful to CSR committee and Sehgal sir for giving me this opportunity. Thank you all. Thanks a lot for all the best. Over to Sonali madam or Sehgal sir. Sonali madam. Okay, I think
Rajeshji, the floor is yours now, and let's hear from you how the two aspects of CSR and SDG are correlated, and how one leads to another, and as professionals, what kind of opportunities get built in and how they should be advising the corporates and the other stakeholders. Over to you, Rajeshji.
Thank you, Sehgalji. Good afternoon, friends. Chairman C.A. Satish Kumar Gupta ji, Vice Chairman Aniket Talati ji in absentia, Sehgal ji, entire Secretariat of CSR who is present here, and my fellow chartered accountants. I'm very fortunate to have this opportunity to interact with you on an important subject of UN SDG and versus Companies Act Schedule 7. Sehgal sir, is this presentation visible?
Yeah, it is. It is.
Okay, thank you. So, friends, the context has been very rightly set by Sehgal sir when he talked about evolution of CSR, and he also gave a very good overview of UN Sustainable Development Goals. If you read this topic, there are two words which are prominently appearing here. One is Schedule 7 and second is UN SDGs. As far as Schedule 7 is concerned, all of us as chartered accountants have a good amount of familiarity. This is a schedule which is an extension of section 135. So whatever CSR activities could be undertaken, they have been stated and listed out in Schedule 7. So we have a good and reasonable amount of understanding as to what Schedule 7 is. Now comes the second question as to what is UN SDGs. Sehgal Sahab tried to explain, and Chairman also touched upon the background as to what UN SDGs are. So we'll go through these two topics in detail. And then comes an important point. Why do we want to compare these two? What is the need? Typically, we don't want to compare things. Schedule 7 is Schedule 7. Let's read it independently. SDGs are also there. Let's follow and read them independently. But there is a very specific need why we need to look at the mapping between the two. And in the next few slides, you will understand the context as to why this mapping is important. The way I have structured presentation of today is, so section 1, I will talk about what is UN SDGs. Section 2, we will discuss and talk about all the activities which are listed under Schedule 7 of CA 13. Under section 3, we'll come to comparison between UN SDGs and Schedule 7 so that you can understand as to what is the kind of overlap is there between the two. And then finally coming to section 4, which are FAQs, which I thought that these are the typical questions which could come to your mind. So we'll try and delve upon some frequently asked questions and followed by Q&A session. Before I come to UN Sustainable Development Goal, I thought that let us first discuss and understand as to what is the meaning of sustainable development. When we talk about Sustainable Development Goals, SDG, what is the meaning of these first two words? Unless and until we understand these two generic words, we would not be able to comprehend as to what SDGs are and what is the context and background. Now look at it this way. We all are human beings. We are consuming multiple resources of Earth. We are doing mining, we are doing, conserving energy resources, we are consuming air, water, and whatnot. Do we even give a thought at all that what would happen to our subsequent generations? Whatever we are doing today, whether our subsequent generations would be in a position to do the same things in the similar way? Are we leaving sufficient resources behind for them to lead their life in the same way the way we are leading? That is how the concept of sustainable development came in force. One of the most widely used definition of sustainable development was given by Brundtland Commission report in 1987. So way back in 1987, it came up. It says that development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Fairly simple. If I consume the entire water of this planet, then there is nothing left for subsequent generations. Would they be able to lead their life in the same manner the way we are leading? So therefore, whatever development we are doing, it has to be sustainable development. There are three pillars of sustainability. We call them triple bottom line also. The pillars are 3 P's: profit, people, and planet. When you talk about profit, it's about economy. When you talk about people, it's about society, people at large. There are multiple stakeholders in a business. Besides shareholders, you have your suppliers, you have your customers, you have government, you have lenders, consumers. So that there is a complete ecosystem within which we operate. And then the third pillar of sustainability is planet, which is environment. So these are the three important pillars of sustainability: profit, people, and planet. And each one of them is denoted by another word: economy, society, and environment. If you look at SDG and CSR, they were both implemented or formulated around the same time. Section 135 came in force around the same time when in 2015, UN SDGs came in force. And the idea was to build a tremendous and sustainable growth model. There are a lot of thematic development areas which are overlap between the two. As far as CSR regulation is concerned, it sets a broad framework and it gives a direction for better sustainable future. So it has listed down activities, that these are the activities which form part under Schedule 7. On the contrary, as far as SDGs are concerned, it is focusing on two things. A, it is giving you the list of areas and activities. At the same time, it's also giving you a well-defined and tangible targets to measure the outcome of activities. So it becomes actually a smart list. It tells you what to achieve and when and how, what are the targets. So as I mentioned, it was signed and adopted at the global level in the year 2015. It was committed by 193 nations of United Nations, member states of United Nations. The objective was to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure prosperity for all as part of new sustainable development agenda. There are total 17 goals, and each of this goal has multiple targets. So all these targets put together are 169. And there is a timeline, which is 2030, by which these targets need to be achieved. So remember, there are 17 goals consisting of 169 targets and to be achieved by 2030. India has played an integral role in the formation and evolution of SDGs and is committed to its achievement. And as far as India is concerned, NITI Aayog is the coordinating and nodal agency for implementation of SDGs in India. This new agenda set by SDGs is people-centered, it's universal, transformative, and also integrated. Remember these words: universal, transformative, and integrated. It calls for action by all the countries, for all people, over the next 15 years, in 5 core areas of critical importance. So it's, in a way, transformational journey for the entire globe. These are the 17 goals which are part of UN SDGs. We'll discuss each of them one by one. Now I come to the presentation on specifically on UN SDGs, and this presentation so as I mentioned, there are 17 goals. There are 3 dimensions of sustainable development: economic growth, social inclusion, and environmental protection. As Sehgal Sahab just now said, there is another way of looking at SDGs. They are there are total 5 P's which we are talking about. We are talking about people, to end poverty and hunger in all forms and ensure dignity and equality. We are talking about prosperity, ensure prosperous and fulfilling lives in harmony with nature. We are talking about planet, talks about the environment, protect the planet and its natural resources, and climate for future generations. Partnership, where we talk about implement the agenda through a solid global partnership. And peace, foster peaceful, just, and inclusive societies. As I mentioned, Sustainable Development Summit happened in 2015 when it was adopted. So these are the few glimpses of that summit. SDGs are universal, applies to everybody. All member nations are part of it. They're indivisible, so there is no, divisibility, or there is no, preferential treatment to anything. And then they are finally transformative in nature, transforming the lives, transforming the climate, transforming the way we think, the way we do things. So now it's about implementation. The first and foremost goal is to end poverty. Who would know the importance of poverty better than a country like India? We have struggled about it. And maybe in some sense, we are still struggling. So end poverty in all its forms everywhere. Target is that by 2030, we eradicate extreme poverty for all people everywhere. That's the target. It's a very audacious target to eradicate poverty across the globe by 2030. And they've also defined what is the meaning of extreme poverty, which is $1.25 a day earning. Somebody earning less than that, that's called extreme poverty. And then by 2030, they also want to reduce at least by half the proportion of men, women, and children of all ages living in poverty. So two specific targets, and then there are many more targets which you can go through at your convenience. Coming to the second goal, end hunger, achieve food security, improve nutrition, and promote sustainable agriculture. So that's about zero hunger. Target is that by 2030, we should end hunger, ensure access by all people, in particular the people who are poor in vulnerable situations, including infants, to safe, nutritious, and sufficient food. Good health and well-being, ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages. Very important. Again, there are multiple targets. One of the most important targets picked up under this goal is reduce the global maternal mortality rate to less than 70 per 100,000 lives. Goal 4, quality education. Ensure inclusive and quality education for all and promote lifelong learning. The target is that by 2030, we ensure that all girls and boys, they get complete, free, equitable, and quality primary and secondary education. So access to education should be available to all. Eliminate gender disparities in education. That's also one of the target. Coming specifically to gender equality, achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. Target is to end all forms of discrimination against all women and girls everywhere. Ensure universal access to sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights. Goal 6, ensure access to water and sanitation for all. Clean water and sanitation. Achieve universal and equitable access to safe and affordable drinking water for all. Affordable and clean energy. A lot is being talked about renewable energy. So ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. Target again 2030. Goal 8, promote inclusive and sustainable economic growth, employment, and decent work for all. The words are inclusive and sustainable economic growth, decent work and economic growth. So their SDGs have tried to build a target around it, saying that at least 7% gross domestic growth per annum in the least developed countries. That's the target that they set. The least developed country should have minimum of 7% GDP, and other countries, they should have higher level of economic productivity through diversification, technological upgradation, innovation. So they are given benchmarks for two different sets of types of countries. Goal 9, build resilient infrastructure, promote sustainable industrialization, and foster innovation. The target is to develop quality infrastructure to support economic development and human well-being with a focus on affordable and equitable access for all. Another important one, reduce inequalities within and among countries. So within the country and also among countries, reduce inequalities. We talked about gender inequality in a goal prior to this. So the idea here is that progressively we should be able to achieve and sustain income growth of the bottom 40% of the population at a rate higher than the national average. So unless and until those bottom 40% they grow at a rate higher than the national average, how would they be able to catch up? So this target has been set up very intelligently, and then empower and promote the social, economic, and political inclusion of all, irrespective of age, sex, disability, race, ethnicity. So that's how you eliminate inequality. Goal 11, make cities inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. So sustainable cities and communities. Idea is to ensure access for all to adequate, safe, and affordable housing and basic services. Upgradation of slums. Slum area development is also part of our Schedule 7 activities. Goal 12, ensure sustainable consumption and production patterns. By 2030, half per capita global food waste at the retail and consumer levels and reduce food losses. Very simple thing, but really very important. When you talk about sustainable consumption, try to reduce wastage. So the goal is to reduce wastage by 50% by 2030. Climate action. Goal 13, take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. Integrate climate change measures into national policies, strategies, and planning. So that's the target set. It's for the governments to integrate climate change related matters into their annual plans. Now we come to life below water. Conserve and sustainably use the oceans, seas, and marine resources. By 2025, prevent and significantly reduce marine pollution of all kinds, in particular form land-based activities, including marine debris and nutrient pollution. So this target is set for 2025. There are a few more targets relating to life below water. Some of them, the goal was to achieve by 2020, and some are to achieve by 2030. Now we talk about life on land. How do you manage your forests? How do you combat desertification, stop the advancement of deserts, halt and reverse land degradation, halt biodiversity losses? The target is to ensure the conservation, restoration, and sustainable use of terrestrial and inland fresh water ecosystems and their services. Goal 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions promote just, peaceful, and inclusive societies. Less conflicts, less war. Significantly reduce all forms of violence and related death rates everywhere. And finally, Goal 17, revitalize a global partnership for sustainable development. Strengthen domestic resource mobilization, including through international support to developing countries. Improve domestic capacity for tax and other revenue collection. So build global partnerships for sustainable development. So these are the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which I briefly tried to touch upon, all 17 goals. I'll come back to the main presentation again. Having understood as to what UN SDGs are, now we move to Schedule 7 of Companies Act. In case there are any questions, should we take Shakun questions right now, or would you want to take it up later?
I think we can do it in the end.
All right. Okay, Saigal sir. Thank you. Now coming to Schedule 7. So before I come to Schedule 7, a quick snapshot of law relating to CSR. So Section 135 of CA13 is the governing section. We all know about it. Under the authority of that section, we have the company's CSR rules 2015. The rules have been very recently amended, and the amended rules came in force from 22nd January 21. In fact, Section 135 also underwent very significant amendments which came in force with effect from 22nd January. Then Schedule 7, activities which may be included by companies in their CSR policies. So Schedule 7 is part of Companies Act, and it governs the activities which are stated in Section 135. And then the fourth piece of law is the Company's Auditor's Report Order 2020. As chartered accountants, while signing audit reports, so the CARO has made a specific provision to talk about CSR with effect from financial year 21-22. There are two specific requirements here. One requirement is that whether the company has transferred the unspent amount of CSR relating to ongoing projects within a period of 30 days to a special bank account. That's one specific requirement. Second specific requirement is whether the unspent amount has been transferred to a fund specified under Schedule 7. So an auditor is required to comment on both these requirements under CARO, and effective is from financial year 21-22. The reason for this is that because the company's amendment, the CSR amended law came in force on 22nd January 21. After it came into force, this is the first financial year which is going to get over. So the compliance is triggered only now. I'll not delve deep into Section 135 or the CSR rules. So I'm just bringing some framework in order to build the context of what we are going to discuss and talk. So therefore, I thought that I'll show one or two slides which refreshes and revives your memory as to what the CSR law is all about. So the applicability of CSR is coming from under Section 135(1). It says that any company meeting one or more criteria during the immediately preceding financial year. There are three criteria given. Criteria 1 is the net worth is rupees 500 crore or more. Second criteria is turnover is 1000 crore or more. And the third criteria is net profit is 5 crore or more. So now, if any of these three criteria is met in the immediately preceding financial year, then what is company required to do? Then this company is required to form a CSR committee. So A, you get covered under Section 135(1). Then B, you set up a CSR committee. Then comes the C. What is your obligation? Your obligation to spend is 2% of average net profits of preceding 3 years. That's the obligation. Now, it may so happen that a company which is covered under any of these three criteria, and more particularly criteria number 1 or 2, it's not getting covered under criteria number 3. It's quite possible that it may be covered under CSR, but it may not have adequate profits to spend on CSR as per the profitability criteria. So that's quite possible. But that doesn't mean that the company is not required to form a CSR committee. I have picked up very specific provisions of Section 135 and also CSR policy, which only relate to Schedule 7. I have not taken out the entire 135 or CSR policy regulation. So Section 135(3), it specifically says that CSR committee shall formulate and recommend to the board a CSR policy which shall indicate the activities to be undertaken by the company in areas or subject specified in Schedule 7. So it is restricted that CSR policy shall take up the activities specified in Schedule 7. Now look at Rule 5.2 of the company's CSR policy rules, 2014. It says the requirement of annual action plan, and it also says the list of CSR projects or programs that are approved to be undertaken in areas or subjects specified in Schedule 7. So at two places it is made absolutely clear that activities have to be the activities stated in Schedule 7. Now comes another very interesting question. What is CSR? When I say social responsibility, is it equivalent to donation? If I give something to somebody as a charity, is it CSR? If I give meal to somebody, a person is hungry, out of benevolence, I give a meal to him or her. Is it CSR? That's where the context differs. So friends, understand that CSR is not donation. And donation is not CSR, so vice versa. The very important ingredient of CSR is it has to be project or activity driven. It should be part of Schedule 7, we already know. Society at large should be served. And it is the responsibility of the business. It's not a kind-heartedness. As a responsible corporate citizen, you are required to spend money on CSR. It's a responsibility. Which means that merely check issuing activity without any philosophy of serving the society cannot be termed as CSR. You can't say that, look, I have issued a check of 10 crore rupees out of my CSR funds and my role and responsibility is over. I have complied with the requirement. No, that's not CSR. CSR requires involvement. That's the way CSR law has been structured. It requires involvement of management, and if employees get involved, it's still better. So there has to be impact on the society by way of involvement of the corporate citizens. Simply giving away money in charities is charity or philanthropy. It's not CSR. Distributing food packets to poor during a festival is benevolence and not eradicating hunger. Schedule 7 talks about the word eradicating hunger. So if you give a meal to someone of one evening or one afternoon, you're not eradicating his hunger. You're just serving his immediate need. That's not CSR. Moving to Schedule 7. We will talk one by one various items of Schedule 7. And as I mentioned in the previous discussion, that CSR is not check writing, it is activity or program. So these are the activities or programs which a corporate could undertake to comply with CSR requirements. At 4 or 5 places, I have given orange color to this. So wherever there is a contribution permitted, I have given a different color so that you can know that those are the only exception of writing checks. Though MCA's and government's policy document doesn't promote giving contribution. So the first item in Schedule 7, it talks about eradicating hunger. We just now talked about it. Giving meals to someone is not eradication of hunger. So the objective should be to eradicate hunger, poverty, and malnutrition. It's wholesome, it's inclusive. It's not, meeting need of today and forgetting about tomorrow. Promoting healthcare, including preventive healthcare. So even preventive healthcare, health checkup camps, they form part of it. And sanitation, including contribution to Swachh Bharat Kosh. So this is where the word contribution has been used. So it is an exception to the activity, to the project. So if you are contributing to Swachh Bharat Kosh, you have discharged your responsibility of CSR. You don't have to get involved as to what Swachh Bharat Kosh has done with that money. And making available safe drinking water. Now, if you see the first one, it very closely aligns with UN SDGs we just now discussed and talked about. Very, very closely it aligns with that. Coming to the second one, promoting education, including special education, employment enhancing vocational skills. There also, they have given emphasis that these skills should be targeted ideally towards children, women, elderly, and differently abled. Not that you can't do it for, male adults, but if you focus on these sections, society is still better. And livelihood enhancement, again, very closely associated with as UN SDGs. Promoting gender equality. This was a specific item under SDGs, gender inequality. Same thing is appearing in Schedule 7 as well. So empowering women, setting up homes and hostels for women and orphans, setting up old age homes, daycare centers, and such other facilities for senior citizens, and measures for reducing inequalities faced by socially and economically backward groups. So whatever societal inequalities are there, measures taken to bridge those gaps. So you can see the first 3 items of Schedule 7, they are very closely aligned with SDGs. Coming to the fourth one, ensuring environmental sustainability. Now you would recall climate change is an important agenda item of SDGs. Schedule 7 talks about ecological balance. It talks about protection of flora and fauna. It talks about animal welfare, agroforestry, conservation of natural resources, and maintaining quality of soil, air, and water. Now here also, there is an item relating to contribution to the Clean Ganga Fund set up by central government for rejuvenation of river Ganga. So this is the second item where contribution is permitted. The first one was Swachh Bharat Kosh. Next we come to is protection of national heritage, art and culture, including restoration of buildings, sites, historical importance and work of art. Setting up public libraries, promotion and development of traditional art and handicrafts. Coming to sixth one, measures for benefit of armed forces. There is no specific mention about this particular item as far as SDGs are concerned, but it is very important. for the country's sovereignty and protection of its borders, that we take care of war widows, we take care of the dependents of our armed forces, whether it is CAPF or Central Paramilitary Forces veterans, their dependents, including widows. Training to promote rural sports, nationally recognized sports, Paralympic sports, and Olympic sports. Another item of contribution, Prime Minister National Relief Fund and PM Care Fund, plus any other fund set up by central government for socio-economic development. So two funds are specifically stated, PM Cares and PM National Relief Fund. Other than that, if there is any other fund set up by central government, that would also form part of this. So this is a third item of contribution. Now the fourth item of contribution to incubators or research and development projects in the field of science, technology, engineering, and medicine, funded by central government, state government, or PSUs, or any agency of the central government or state government. There is a subpart to this contribution, fourth item of contribution, there is a subpart to it, contribution to public funded universities. And these universities are also defined, IITs, DAE, DBT, DST, Department of Pharmaceuticals, Ayush, DRDO, ICAR, ICMR, CSIR, who are engaged in conducting research in science, technology, engineering, and medicine, aimed at promoting sustainable development goals. Now just see here. Schedule 7 carries a specific reference to sustainable development goals. Now you can see there is a close alignment between the two. Then we come to the next one, rural development projects, slum area development. They've also defined slum area being an area which is declared by the central or state government or any other competent authority under any law. So development of that slum area is also part of it. Disaster management, including relief, rehabilitation, and reconstruction activities. Now here comes a tricky point. I just now talked about that giving free meals or food to someone without eradicating hunger is not CSR. But if you look at it in a different context, if there is a natural calamity, if there is a disaster like COVID, people need to be helped and supported. So if any food distribution program has been run during COVID, that would fall under item 12, and it's perfectly within the ambit of CSR. Although it's not eradicating hunger, but it's meeting the immediate requirement of relief and rehabilitation in a disaster situation. Now comes the next question. What qualifies and what doesn't? So we now know Schedule 7, we know SDGs. Whether anything and everything is stated in Schedule 7 qualifies for CSR expenditure? Answer is no. There are still qualifiers. There are many things which may not qualify, though they are appearing under Schedule 7. What are those things? The undertaking of CSR activities has to be approved by the board and recommended by CSR committee. Another very, very important one is only projects undertaken in India qualify. This is the beauty of India's CSR program, that profits generated in India are required to be deployed for CSR, and it has to be done within India only. So in case you have a profit arising out of a foreign branch, those profits are not required, that are not covered under the 2% criteria to identify the prescribed amount of CSR. Likewise, if you are doing any project outside India, that also does not qualify as a CSR project. So it has to be done in India. There is only one exception to this. If you are promoting national or state level sports persons and sending them out for training, that is still a CSR. So that's an exception to it. Otherwise, if you do any project outside India, is not CSR. Next one, projects that benefit only employees or families of the company, they do not qualify. You can't say that I have opened a school for the benefit of my employees and I have fulfilled my CSR obligation. You can't say that I have opened a hospital and I have fulfilled my CSR obligations and that hospital is meant only for the employees and their families. No. That you are doing as a role of employer towards your employees. You're discharging that obligation and role. You're giving some extra benefits to your employees. That can't be termed as CSR. It is possible that some CSR activities which are done for the public at large, some of the employees are also beneficiary to it. That's okay. So you set up a hospital for the benefit of public at large. However, some of your own employees and their families, they also visit that hospital. That's fine. But you can't create a hospital which is only meant for the employees. Political contributions, it doesn't qualify, rightly so. Activities undertaken during the normal course of business do not qualify. So whatever is your normal course of business, those activities do not qualify as CSR. There is an exception to this also. So this is a rule, and exception is if you are a company, which is a pharma company or a medical equipment company, and you are doing a COVID related research and development with entities specified in Schedule 7, item number 9, that is an exception to normal course of business. So your normal course of business could be anyways to do research or development for COVID, or to build devices or vaccinations or medicines or drugs for COVID. That could be a normal course of business. In that case also, you are allowed to do R&D work relating to COVID in collaboration with certain institutions, and that would qualify as CSR. So that's an exception. Otherwise, normal course of business doesn't qualify for CSR. Activities for statutory obligations. So if you are doing anything which you are required to do statutorily, for example, as part of your pollution control measurement under the law, you are required to have certain type of effluent treatment or incinerators or any other kind of mechanism. That is your statutory obligation. If you do that, you can't say that you are protecting environment. That's not CSR. It will not qualify for CSR. And then sponsorship for deriving marketing benefits for products or services do not qualify. So if you are doing any sponsorship to derive marketing benefits, that also does not qualify as CSR. So these are the exceptions to Schedule 7. Coming to relaxations which have been given during COVID pandemic time. What are these relaxations? They all came by way of multiple circulars. Though they came by way of MCA circulars, but the theme of Schedule 7 was not disturbed. So you can treat them more as a clarification. They are not creating any new law. It's just a clarification of the existing list. So expenditure related to COVID-19 under Schedule 7 to be permitted as CSR activities is the first general circular. Contribution to PM Care Fund, it was permitted by way of a clarification. Later on, it got embedded in Schedule 7. So what I showed you as Schedule 7, it already captures PM Cares Fund as an item. Contribution towards following State Disaster Management Authority and ex gratia payment to temporary / casual workers. So these are also permitted expenditure, permitted payments under CSR, State Disaster Management Authority, or ex gratia payment to, the word used is temporary / casual workers. It doesn't cover permanent workers. If you pay ex gratia to permanent workers, that would not qualify as CSR. The next circular talks about expenditure to be qualified as CSR expenditure, carrying out awareness or campaign program for COVID-19. So if you are doing awareness program for COVID-19 vaccination, that will also qualify as CSR expenditure. Then the next circular talks about setting up temporary hospitals, temporary COVID care facilities. They also qualify as CSR expenditure. Now, if you see this, all these points, they would somewhere relate with the disaster management, item number 12 of Schedule 7. Next is expenditure relating to health infrastructure for COVID care, establishing medical oxygen generation and storage plants, manufacturing supply of oxygen concentrators, ventilators, cylinders, and other medical equipments to counter COVID-19 or similar activities. The last one, this is a very interesting circular. What it said was that in case a company has contributed to PM CARES fund over and above the minimum prescribed amount, so you are required to spend about 1 crore rupees in that financial year, but you contributed 1.25 crore rupees, 25 lakh rupees extra to PM CARE fund. As on 31st March 20, then you can offset the excess against 2021. So this is a very, very specific provision. And the current legislation is that if you do an excess expenditure on CSR as on 31st March 21, then you are entitled to take benefit of carryover for a period of next 3 years against the requirement of those 3 years. But that applies from 21st January 2021 only. So the first financial year it applies to is 31st March 21. It doesn't apply to 31st March 20. So specifically to take care of the COVID related issue and to build a corpus for the COVID management, this relaxation was given so that companies could contribute more in March 20 towards this fund. So friends, we have covered 2 sections, section 1, section 2, schedule 7 and SDGs. Now we'll talk about how UN SDGs are mapping with areas under schedule 7. What is the correlation between the two? Now have a look at this. I have taken now these 5-6 slides relating to mapping from HLC 2018. So this is a high level committee report of 2018. This committee was set up by Ministry of Corporate Affairs to review CSR, its efficiency, and give recommendations. So as part of the report, they tried to map SDGs with Schedule 7. So this mapping could differ from person to person. What I'm showing you is the mapping done by MCA. So item 1, it relates to the area of Schedule 7, environment, animal welfare, and conservation of resources. Now this area is taken care of by multiple goals of SDGs, goals 6, 7, 11, 13, 14, and 15. So precisely speaking, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, sustainable cities and communities, climate action, life below water, and life on land. So this particular item of Schedule 7 is capturing 6 items. This is the amount of expenditure out of the overall CSR spend, which has gone towards this item number 1. So 8.72% of total CSR spend has gone towards environment, animal welfare, and conservation of resources. Coming to second, education, differently abled, and livelihood. This particular area of Schedule 7 is mapped against no poverty, zero hunger, quality education, decent work and economic growth. And it gets the maximum amount of contribution of CSR funds, 36.95%. So these percentages, they were derived up till 31st March 2018. So whatever CSR spend were made since inception till 31st March 2018, the percentage is based on that. So education has got the largest amount of contribution of CSR funds. The next area is health, eradicating hunger, poverty and malnutrition, safe drinking water and sanitation. Again, it is mapped against no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, clean water and sanitation, reduce inequalities. And total of 28% of total CSR spend has gone towards it. Encouraging sports is similar to decent work and economic growth. Heritage, art and culture is reflected under sustainable cities and communities, industry, innovation and infrastructure. Gender equality, women empowerment. So we discuss about that. Gender equality is a specific item. Reduce inequality is another separate goal under SDGs, and poverty. Rural development. When we talk about rural development, is zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. Slum area development likewise could be related to item 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, and 9. Now comes the trickier one, Prime Minister's National Relief Fund and any other fund. So these funds, they have their own mandate. They spend money towards specific areas or activities. According to that, it has been mapped to item 1, 2, 3, 6, and 15. Other sectors, tech incubators, benefits to armed forces, admin overheads, though a relatively small percentage has gone towards it, mapped to 3, 4, 8, 9, 12, and 13. So friends, these are some of the mapping with SDGs. While discussing about Schedule 7, I highlighted some specific areas which are not aligned with SDGs. By and large, you will see the theme is the same. Moving on to FAQs. So now the question is whether contribution made to PM CARES fund shall qualify as CSR expenditure. Yes, by all means, it shall qualify as CSR expenditure. It's covered under item 7 of Schedule 7, and it has been further clarified by Office Memorandum of March 2020. The next one is whether contribution made to CM Relief Fund or State Relief Fund for COVID-19 shall qualify as CSR expenditure. Remember, it shall not qualify. CM Relief Fund and State Relief Fund, they do not qualify for CSR expenditure. What qualifies is State Disaster Management Authority. So if the contribution is made to a State Disaster Management Authority, SDMA, then it qualifies. But if it is a Chief Minister Relief Fund, it doesn't. Next one is whether spending of CSR funds for COVID-19 related activities shall qualify as CSR expenditure. We elaborately discussed about it in the previous slide. It does qualify. There are two specific items under Schedule 7 under which it can get covered. So item 1, which talks about promoting healthcare, including preventive healthcare, sanitation, it gets covered under there. And item 12, COVID is a declared disaster. So it gets covered under item number 12 also, which is disaster management, including relief, rehabilitation, and reconstruction. Now, another interesting question. Can the CSR amount be spent on activities beyond Schedule 7? It's very clear. At the beginning of the session, I showed you a slide. The section 135 and CSR rules, they both talk about activities stated in the Schedule 7. There has been a general circular issued by MCA which says that whatever items are mentioned in CSR policies, it must be relatable to Schedule 7. The good thing which they have done is, they said that it must be interpreted liberally so as to capture the essence of the subjects enumerated in the said schedule. The Schedule 7 should not be construed or treated as a restrictive schedule. It should be interpreted liberally so that its essence gets captured. That's a clarification, which is a beautiful clarification given by MCA. And then it said items listed under Schedule 7 are broad-based and are intended to cover a wide range of activities. You can very clearly see that. Eradicating hunger is a very wide word. You can eradicate hunger in multiple ways. So, a lot of activities under eradicating hunger itself gets covered. Another question. Whether expenditure used to augment resources of a training program under Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana qualify as CSR? It may be qualified in view of clause 2 of Schedule 7. Now, clause 2, what it says is that promoting education, including special education and employment enhancing vocational skills, it gets covered over there. Livelihood enhancement projects, so it gets covered there. So it qualifies. This is another very common question I'm generally confronted with in my various webinars and sessions on CSR, whether beautification of a prime junction is treated as a CSR or not. Answer is mere beautification may not be covered. However, if it relates to environmental sustainability, then it will be covered under item number 4. And item number 4 specifically talks about environment sustainability. So mere beautification may not get covered, but if it helps in improving the environment, quality of air, of course, yes. Another commonly asked question, that my office is situated, registered office is situated in Delhi. My plant is located in Dehradun. Am I required to do CSR in and around Dehradun and Delhi? Friends, there is no such specific requirement except that the law says you should give preference to local area. It doesn't say that you cannot do outside local area. It only says preference to the local area. And why it says so? Let's assume you are a mining company or you are constructing a dam. You are displacing thousands and lakhs of people while constructing a dam. While digging mines, you are displacing the population. You owe a responsibility towards people of that area. You should do good for people of that area. And physically also the company is located in that area, so it's much easier to connect with the people. So therefore the law has only said that the preference should be given to the local area and it's not mandatory. The next one is, if a robot is purchased by a company and donated to a hospital for COVID-19 treatment, will it qualify for CSR activity? If so, under what clause? So it will qualify, as I mentioned to you, item 1 talks about the health and healthcare, item 12 disaster management, it gets covered under both. provided the company is not operating in the same business. Activities being done in the ordinary course of business do not qualify for CSR. The next commonly asked question, a company incurs some expenditure on roadside plantation and also uses the same for its advertisement. Can it be classified as CSR expense? Thin dividing line. You are doing plantation, you are doing environmental sustainability falling under item 4 of Schedule 7, but at the same time, you are also promoting yourself. Answer is that it can get covered, it can get qualified, but your intent should be clear. The display of name should be incidental to the main purpose of CSR. It can't become the mode of advertising. If the display of name is by way of advertising, purpose is advertising, then it would not qualify as a CSR expenditure. Another question, a company has set up solar power facility at its office. Can it be considered as CSR spend under environment sustainability head under Schedule 7? Also, can the asset created through CSR spend be capitalized in the books of the company? Now, again here, you must distinguish between the two. Solar power facility created for the benefit of the company for its captive purpose will not be considered as a CSR activity. It can be considered as CSR activity of generating renewable electricity, provided it is outside a normal course of business, provided it is not meant for your captive use. As far as the capital asset creation is concerned, I'll come to that in the subsequent slide. I'll deal with this subject in detail. I take another example. If a donation of 10 lakh is given to an old age home, specific instructions are given to be used for construction of a small hospital. Can this be considered as eligible CSR expenditure? So here what you are doing is you are part of a larger project. Within that larger project, you are setting up a hospital at a cost of 10 lakh rupees. The activity of hospital is covered. It's an independent standalone activity and it qualifies for CSR expenditure. This is another very interesting question, and the clarity emerged after 22nd January 21. The issue involved here is that if you are creating a capital asset through CSR, what should you do? The capital asset is, let's say, in the form of a school or a hospital. That school or hospital capitalized in the books of CSR company is not or cannot be used for the business purposes of that company. So first of all, is it right to capitalize that asset in the books? An asset which is not a revenue generating asset for that company? Prior to 22nd January 21, we used to look for answers under various accounting provisions and various accounting and taxation provisions. The clarity has emerged by way of amendment to Rule 7.4 of CSR rules, which very clearly says that if you have created a capital asset out of CSR, it shall be held by. So they have identified and specified the entities who can hold the CSR asset. It cannot reside in the balance sheet of the CSR company. And who are these entities who could hold it? It could be a company established under Section 8, registered public trust, or a registered society. It should also hold a CSR registration number. So this is the one category. Second category, beneficiaries of the CSR project. So let's say there is a pool of people who are getting benefited out of that project. So you can actually create a self-help group collective group or entity which collectively, denotes and represents the beneficiaries. So such an entity or such a self-help group could also hold the asset. For example, you have donated an ambulance for the benefit of a far-flung village so that villagers could reach to a hospital at the time of emergency. So it could be held by the villagers, their self-help group. Or another exception is a public authority could also hold it. Economic benefits arising from CSR assets, they cannot be treated as part of business profits. If you derive any economic benefits out of CSR asset, then it has to be redeployed in the project. It has to be transferred to a special fund, or it can be a part of unspent amount. So these are the three mechanisms by which you can deal with it. Now the next question is that if you were holding a CSR asset in the books as on 22nd January 21, when this provision came in force, then what should you do? For that, the provision is that within next 180 days, you should transfer that CSR asset to any of these three entities so as to comply with this law. If you're unable to do that within 180 days, another grace period of 90 days has been permitted to do that. So essentially speaking, within a period of 270 days, you should transfer any CSR asset capitalized in the books of CSR company to any of these entities. Next question is whether CSR expanding exclusively for the benefit of employees and their families will qualify. Answer is a big no. You cannot do that. Benefit to employees could be incidental to the larger public good, and then it can be looked at liberally. So there has to be a larger public good. The next one is payment of ex gratia to temporary casual daily wage workers shall qualify as CSR expenditure. We talked about this. It shall be an admissible expenditure as a one-time exception. Remember that it is allowed only in the case of temporary casual or daily wage workers. If you give ex gratia to your permanent employees, that does not qualify as CSR expenditure. The next one is whether payment of salary or wages to employees and workers, including contract labor, during the lockdown period can be adjusted against the CSR expenditure of the companies. Answer here is no, it does not qualify. What the circular says is that if payment of salary or wages to employees or workers have been made during lockdown period, it's a moral obligation of the employer, because the employees have no alternative source of livelihood or employment. Any such payment will not qualify as CSR expenditure. With this, friends, I come to the end of my presentation. I look forward to the questions or queries in which you may have. Sehgal sir.
Thank you, Rajesh ji, for such an excellent presentation. Possibly the questions which we had in our mind, you have already touched upon that by way of your FAQs. We are just looking at our chat box if we have received anything further from our viewers. But I think I must say that you dealt with this subject in a most wonderful and excellent manner. The way you came out with the FAQs and the clarity on the Schedule 7 and SDGs already embedded in the Schedule 7. So that was something which is a prime takeaway for all of our members. So in all, what is your final say in terms of what all the professionals should be looking into when they are guiding the corporates or their clients in this area? Because COVID was an exceptional thing, and when you talk about the SDGs, they touch each and every element of the human activity and economic activity. So how to differentiate? You gave a what you call a qualifying line that it should not be arising out of the usual business activity and must be for the larger good. But are there any other touchstones that the company doesn't get into any expenditure which do not qualify as the CSR expenditure? So if you could please elaborate on that.
So good question, Saigal sir. And you see, CSR is a subject which should come from the core of heart. If that heart and conscience is there into it, let's look at what was the need of embedding a law. It wasn't like that the companies were not spending money on CSR. You take the case of Infosys Foundation, SRF Foundation, Reliance Foundation, and many more. They came in existence much before Section 135 came into existence. So which means there was a desire on the part of corporates to do public good. What Section 135 has done is it has given you a framework to do that good. And it has also forced certain companies who were not inclined or willing to do that. So that's first part of it. So driven by conscience. Now comes the second part of it as to what should you do? Out of these 12 areas, what should I pick up? I can give you a few pointers as to how a company could choose as to which area to get into. One possible way of looking at it is that where is your plant located and what are the needs of the people around that plant? I gave you two examples of mining industry and also a construction of hydropower dam. When you are displacing large number of people, it is a moral obligation to provide them livelihood, to get them good education, hospitals, and take care of them in a way which goes beyond the legal requirements. There could be certain legal requirements to take care of the people who are displaced. But if you go beyond that and serve the community in that manner, that's one way. The other way is that many times, these automobile companies or very large infrastructure projects and plants, they get set up in far-flung areas. When these executives they reach there, the requirements of that area are such which are right in front of you. So the best way to get involved in the CSR activities is the people around you. And that's the reason the CSR law, it gives preference to the local area. There is also a concept which Government of India has created, which is the aspirational districts. So out of 500 plus odd districts in the country, they have stated 100 districts as the aspirational districts, the districts which need more. So as a corporate, companies should look at which are the aspirational districts and how do we provide support to those aspirational districts. Let me take a classic example. People sitting in and around Delhi, Bombay, there are a whole lot of NGO activities happening. Perhaps these people, the people living in NCR, people living in and around Mumbai, they may not have that big a requirement of that social good compared to people in Uttaranchal, Northeast, Leh, Ladakh. And that's where I have seen CSR policies of multiple companies. I can take few names, REC Foundation. I mean, they specifically promote CSR in aspirational districts. So they want to go and spend money in Northeast. There are companies who have set up a criteria that if you had to do CSR in non-aspirational district, it should fulfill certain criteria. What could be the possible criteria? There should not be any governmental intervention or support available in that specific area in that particular geography. So if that is fulfilled, then you are allowed to spend money in that area. So these are the ways and means through which the funding could be channelized to the right pocket, to the right people. From the professional point of view, I just want to touch upon, with your permission, one specific point which Chairman Gupta ji also touched upon. There are a lot of professional opportunities for chartered accountants emerging out of CSR legislation. Starting from a very simple one, verification and certification of Form CSR1, that's a simple one. Moving to the next one, which is the utilization certificate. So whenever CSR money is given to an implementation agency, there was an advisory issued by ICAI, again much prior to January 21, when the new legislation came in force, to obtain a utilization certificate. There is a format given of that utilization certificate, which a chartered accountant only can give, no other professional can give. After January 21, there is a requirement and responsibility cast upon the board that whatever money is given to an implementation agency, it should satisfy that it has been utilized. And CFO has to give that certificate. Now the question is, how would a CFO give that certificate? Obviously, he would look towards some other professional like chartered accountant or practicing CS. So this becomes another important area of practice. The third area of practice is the drafting of CSR policy. It's a mandatory document required to be drafted by each and every company. Drafting of CSR policy is not a mechanical job. It requires a lot of deliberation, a lot of iteration, ideation, understanding the needs of the people around that area. So could be an interesting practice area for chartered accountants. The fourth one is the impact assessment. So from January 21 onwards, impact assessment has been made mandatory for certain type of companies. The companies which have a CSR budget of 10 crore and the companies within that, the project which are above 1 crore. So in those cases, an impact assessment has been made mandatory. And there is also an additional budget allowed for impact assessment, which is 5% of the total CSR spend or 50,000, 50 lakh, whichever is lower. So this could also become an important area of practice. I know several chartered accountants who are practicing in the area of impact assessment. As of now, there is no specific professional who has been authorized to do impact assessment. So we as chartered accountants are very much entitled to do that. So these are some of the very specific areas which came to my mind which could have professional opportunities and enrichment from chartered accountants. And beyond that, the entire spectrum of CSR is open for us.
Thank you, Rajesh ji. I'll now request my colleagues in the committee. Shakun, are you ready with the questions?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, sir. Sir, we have query. The first query is whether providing foods to roadside poor people will be covered under eradicating hunger.
I think I answered this question. Providing food packets is not eradication of hunger, so it would not get covered under Schedule 7. Having said that, as I mentioned, in case of disaster management, the requirement is disaster management including relief. Under that category, whatever food packet distribution work has happened during COVID, it gets covered under CSR.
Yes, sir. So the next question is whether providing capital assets like truck for carrying dead animals will be covered in environment protection.
Yes, it could be, because it is talking about environmental sustainability. The project is relating to environmental sustainability, and if the capital asset is being used for that particular item, to my mind, it should be.
So the next question is donation to Sri Ram Janmabhoomi by considering as heritage, art, culture are amount to CSR activities?
I would refrain from answering this question, so you can move on, please.
Sure, sir. Sir, the query is, in PM Care Fund, you spoke about limit. What is cap which is eligible under CSR in a financial year?
So there is no limit to donate to PM Care funds. I took the PM Care Fund in a different context. And that context was if on 31st March 2020, if a company has donated more than the required amount to PM Care Fund, then that excess amount was allowed to be carried over for set off against the requirement of subsequent years. This specific provision was a one-time provision, and to my mind, why it came in force was there was an immediate need of funding projects relating to COVID, and that's the reason government allowed that if you are overspending, overgiving money to PM Cares, then you should be entitled to take benefit of that in subsequent years.
Yes, sir. Sir, a company having net profit above rupees 5 crore in the financial year ending 2017 and 18, but net profit of rupees 4.62 crore in 2019 and net profit of rupees 1.65 crore in 2020. Is it required to spend CSR in 2021?
Okay. So as I mentioned, it has to be looked at layer by layer. So the first trigger is section 135(1), when you meet any of the three criteria: turnover, net worth, or net profit. So I am assuming the querist who has asked this question, the company is not meeting any of these three criteria. If any of these three criteria are not mentioned, then even if there is a profit, there is no requirement to spend 2% of the average net profit. Having said that, since you were covered under CSR section 135(1), then you had to continue to maintain the CSR committee for a consecutive period of 3 years. The idea is that you should not be dismantling your committee every year. You have a CSR policy, you have a CSR committee, it will continue for a period of 3 years. If you are not covered under section 135(1), then you can discontinue that CSR committee and CSR policy.
Yes, sir. So the assets acquired by the trust from the CSR, amount received from the donor will carried at ₹1 or purchased value.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes, sir. So assets acquired by the trust from the CSR amount received from the donor will carried at ₹1 or purchased value.
It would be carried at the purchase value. See, when I said that capital asset cannot be capitalized in the books of CSR company has a different meaning than capitalization happening in the books of trust, section 8 company or registered society. They can do the capitalization at a rate at which it was purchased.
Yes, sir. So the amount unspent as on 31st March 21 has to be spent in 6 months as per Schedule 7.
Okay, so all right. So this is a question which relates to unspent amount as on 31st March 21. Let me make a distinction. Let me go a year behind, 31st March 20. And then I'll build a story from there. So if it is 31st March 20 unspent amount, the requirement was a plain simple requirement that the board need to give a disclosure in its report that it failed to spend the amount, and it should give the reasons why it could not spend the amount. That was a plain simple requirement on 31st March 20. Now coming to 31st March 21, if you have failed to spend the amount, there are two different avenues. Avenue number one, the unspent amount, it relates to an ongoing project. What is ongoing project? That is also defined in CSR law. It's a project which has 3 years to complete after the commencement year. So if you commence a project now, plus 3 more years, that's ongoing project. So if the money belongs to a project which is a longer term project and an ongoing project, qualified as an ongoing project, then you had to deposit that unspent amount within a period of 30 days in a separate account opened by the company called unspent CSR amount. So that is the requirement number one. Second situation, in case you don't have any ongoing project, there is an unspent amount on 31st March 21, then you should deposit that unspent amount within a period of 6 months in a fund specified under Schedule 7. So I have already stated while talking about Schedule 7, there are 4 or 5 areas where contribution is permitted. So this unspent amount could be deposited in 6 months in any of those funds which are specified in Schedule 7. In both the cases, the CARO report makes it mandatory from financial year 21-22 for the auditors to report whether it has been done or not. Next, please.
Yes, sir. So, any exceptions where an organization can send on activities related to their core business area?
Let me give you a few examples here, and this would give you some clarity as to how the context of CSR is different in India versus globally. There is a term called strategic CSR. Now, what is strategic CSR? Means whatever I do in a manner which keeps the society at the forefront. For example, I am consuming electricity, but I consume renewable energy, right? I am doing, discharging effluents, but I am taking care of discharge of effluents in a manner that my raw material cost is higher. I buy raw material in such a manner so that effluents are the bare minimum or they are negligible. Let me give you another example. Starbucks. This is one of the largest employers globally. They are required to employ people. Now, as a Starbucks, if they say that I would be employing war veterans, I would be giving first-time employment to people, right? This is example of strategic CSR. The concept of CSR in India is very different. If a company says that I will start using renewable energy at a higher cost, the difference should be entitled as CSR. It does not qualify as CSR in India. You are anyways required to spend on energy and power. So that is where the difference lies between the way the law is structured in India versus the way strategic CSR is looked at globally. Next, please.
So the next one is, what advantage would the corporates have on mapping their CSR activities to SDG and vice versa?
I think that's a good question. See, the requirement is driven by Schedule 7. Larger good is coming from SDGs. And as I mentioned, barring few areas, there is a good amount of overlap. So it's an important subject of discussion and study as to are we aligned with SDGs, which is the global framework. So India is a signatory to SDGs also. CSR law is also designed by India. Barring few areas, it's more or less the same. Next, please.
Yes, sir. So, what incentive would the corporates have on spending on the SDG goals if it does not fall within the preview of CSR expenditure as mandated by Companies Act 2013?
Okay. Answer is fairly simple. It straightway relates to CSR spend prior to year 2014-15 when Section 135 had not come in force. Companies were still spending. The desire of doing public good, the concern for environment, the concern for society, it's paramount. It should ideally not be driven by any law. So and at the same time, CSR law does not restrict you from investing or spending more money than what is required. What it only says is you have to spend 2% of the average net profits at least. That's a minimum. If you want to spend more, you can. Next, please.
Yes, sir. So, does SDG expenditure qualify for income tax deduction? Do the income tax law support the SDG expenditures?
See, income tax is a law which should be looked at differently. It should be looked at differently than SDGs and also Section 135 and CSR. So Section 37(1) of Income Tax Act, it talks about allowance for business expenditure. right? And CSR does not fall into that category. So there is a specific exemption. There is another frequently asked question is if you are contributing to these funds, which I just now talked about under Schedule 7, would you be entitled to get Section 80G benefit? Now, the answer to that question is that there are few funds where you can claim both benefits of CSR and 80G. For example, PM National Relief Fund and PM Care Fund, plus contribution to incubator funds and those autonomous bodies or national laboratories. Those are the areas where if you give contribution, you can claim CSR benefit and you can also claim Section 80G benefit. Having said that, the other two contributions, Swachh Bharat Kosh and Clean Ganga Fund, if you contribute by as per the requirement of CSR, then you can't claim 80G benefit. Why it is so? I have no answer to this, but this is the law. Next, please.
Yes, sir. So, amount paid to the implementing agency could not be spent due to COVID-19 restrictions. Can the company claim that amount is spent since the amount was paid for the specified activities to implementing agency?
I think this is a very interesting question, which I confront with in many webinars. See, the relationship between the company and the implementing agency becomes paramount in this case. And that's the reason I always insist that you should have a very well laid down contractual relationship between the two entities. It should define each and every aspect. It should define milestone as to how the money would be spent. And if it is not spent, then what would happen? So A, look at the contractual relationship. B, look at the situation that you had earmarked money for a particular project, for a particular activity. If that implementation agency is not able to do it, then can you as a company handle it directly? That could be possible second option. Another possible option could be that I remove this implementation agency, bring another implementation agency and get the project completed. So these are the possible ways through which you can handle it. Next, please.
So the next question is, so a number of government companies spend CSR funds on scheme framed by central state government. Do their duty ends on giving the money to some agency, or do they need to ensure that the funds have been used properly?
Okay, answer is very simple here. Even the government companies, they are governed by Section 135. They are governed by Companies Act in Section 135. They have to utilize their CSR requirement in the manner stated in the law. They may be governed by central or state governments' preferences or directives or ideas, but end of the day, they had to comply. They had to fall within the ambit of Section 135 and CSR rules. I can give you examples. All these PSUs, whether it's Coal India Limited or Steel Authority or REC Foundation or NHPC or NTPC, all of them, they comply with CSR law.
Yes, sir. So the last one is, amount paid to PM Care Fund is eligible for CSR spending under the Companies Act. Whether the amount so paid is deductible under expenditure under Section 37 or Section 80G of the Income Tax Act 1961.
I think I have already answered this question. This is not a Section 37(1) deductible item. It's a contribution, it's a donation. In case of PM Cares Fund, you are entitled to claim benefit of 80G alongside CSR benefit. And as I mentioned, the other two funds, Swachh Bharat Kosh and Clean Ganga Kosh, if you had taken benefit under CSR, then you can't claim 80G benefit.
Yes, sir. Sir, there's a last one question. Contribution to IIT Kanpur, whether can be claimed as both CSR expenditure and 80G benefit?
Yes. So under Schedule 7, contribution to incubator fund and contribution to universities, IITs, item 10. Yes. So schedule 7, item 10, it covers IITs. So it gets covered under CSR, and it also qualifies for ATG benefit.
So with this, we take up all the queries. So Rakesh sir, can we end the session?
Yeah, please propose a vote of thanks to Rajesh Mittalji, and he has done exceptionally well in taking the queries and the way he covered the entire session. In fact, very exhaustive, very elaborative, and very thought-provoking. Over to you, Shakun, to conclude the session.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, Rajesh, sir, for giving your precious time and for enhancing our knowledge and give us a practical knowledge for this session. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajesh ji. Thank you.